Olivia Reed tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear as she wrote symbolism in literature across the whiteboard. The high school seniors watched with varying levels of interest as she explained the day's lesson. Ms. Reed, why do we need to analyze symbolism? Can't we just enjoy the story? Called Tyler from the back row. Olivia smiled, setting down her marker. That's actually a great question. Literature isn't just entertainment. It's a reflection of justice, truth, and human experience. The deeper you look, the more you understand about the world around you. After class, Olivia noticed the school newspaper on a desk. The headline caught her eye. Local judge's controversial decision affects school funding. She frowned, remembering the community meeting where she had spoken against Judge Gregory, Hammond's ruling that diverted educational funds to a private development project. In the teacher's lounge. Her colleague Rachel nudged her. Heard you became quite the community activist at that town hall. Olivia shook her head. I just spoke the truth. What Judge Hammond did was technically legal, but morally questionable. Those funds were promised to education. Well, you certainly ruffled some important feathers, Rachel warned. Hammond has friends everywhere. I'm just a high school literature teacher expressing an opinion, Olivia replied. What's he going to do? Sue me for that. What most people at Pinecrest High didn't know about Olivia Reed was that before finding her calling as a teacher, she had graduated with honors from law school. She'd never practiced professionally, having realized during her internships that courtroom battles weren't where she wanted to spend her life. Instead, she channeled her passion for justice into literature and teaching critical thinking to young minds. That evening, Olivia checked her answering machine. A message from the court clerk informed her she was being summoned regarding her traffic violation from last month. Judge Hammond would be presiding on Friday at 9 a.m. Olivia frowned. Traffic violation? She had received a minor ticket for a rolling stop 3 weeks ago, but had already paid the fine online. There should be nothing to appear for. A knot of unease formed in her stomach as she remembered the judge's cold eyes at the town hall meeting, staring directly at her as she spoke. Meanwhile, in his chambers, Judge Hammond adjusted his tie as he reviewed Olivia Reed's file, a thin smile creasing his otherwise stern face. Martin, he called to his clerk. Bring me everything you have on this teacher, Olivia Reed. Martin nodded nervously. He'd worked for Judge Hammond long enough to recognize when the man had set his sights on someone. The traffic violation summons was sent as requested, Your Honor. Good. Hammond leaned back in his chair. She thinks she can stand up in a public forum and question my judgment, my reputation. I've sentenced hardened criminals who showed more respect. The clerk shifted uncomfortably. Sir, it was just a community meeting, freedom of speech, and all that. Hammond's eyes flashed. It's not what she said, Martin. It's how she said it. Laying out legal precedents, questioning the statutory interpretation. She made me look incompetent in front of the entire town council. Later that afternoon, Martin returned with a thin folder. Not much to report, sir. She's been teaching literature at Pinecrest for 10 years. Lives alone, pays her taxes on time, no criminal record. He hesitated before adding, she did graduate from law school 15 years ago. Top of her class, actually, but never took the bar exam. Hammond's eyebrows shot up. A law school graduate? He processed this information, then smiled slowly. Interesting. She knows just enough to be dangerous, but not enough to defend herself properly in court. He turned to the window. Martin, modify the summons. Change it from the paid traffic violation to failure to appear for a scheduled court hearing. Add a contempt charge. Martin blanched. But, sir, that would be fabricating. The system allows judges discretion for a reason, Martin. Consider it a lesson in respect for our little teacher. That evening, Hammond attended a dinner with prominent community leaders, including the superintendent of schools. Between courses, he casually mentioned his concerns about politically active teachers undermining community institutions. Specifically, he said, swirling his wine, I'm troubled by this Olivia Reed situation. Such behavior sets a poor example for students, don't you think? The superintendent nodded nervously. aware of Hammond's influence over school district funding. I'll look into it immediately. The next day, Principal Wilson asked Olivia to stay after the faculty meeting. His expression was uncharacteristically serious. Olivia, I received a concerning call from the superintendent yesterday. Apparently, you've been involved in some sort of legal trouble. Legal trouble? You mean my traffic ticket? I already paid. That online. Wilson slid a paper across the desk. The superintendent mentioned a summons for failure to appear and contempt of court. Judge Hammond personally expressed concerns about having, how did he put it, educators who disrespect legal institutions. Olivia stared at the paper, her mind racing. This doesn't make any sense. I paid the ticket immediately. I have the receipt. Later that day, Olivia found an official court notice in her mailbox detailing charges of failure to appear and contempt of court. It required her appearance before. Judge Hammond in 3 days. With trembling hands, Olivia called the court clerk's office. I'm sorry, Ms. Reed. Our records show you were notified to appear last Friday regarding your traffic violation. The clerk explained impatiently. When you failed to appear, Judge Hammond issued the contempt citation. But I never received any notification about appearing in court, Olivia insisted. I paid the fine online. I have the confirmation number right here. The system shows the payment was processed, but flagged for court appearance due to, let me see, irregular processing, the clerk replied. You'll need to address this with the judge directly. That night, Olivia pulled out a dusty box from her closet, her grandfather's case files, and legal notepads. Next, she retrieved her laptop and began researching Judge Hammond's career history. Article after article painted the picture of a judge whose rulings consistently favored certain developers and business interests. Most interestingly, in the 6 years he'd been on the bench, not a single complaint against him had progressed past the initial filing stage. Her phone rang. It was Rachel from school. Olivia, something weird is happening. Wilson was asking everyone about your classroom conduct, whether you discuss political topics with students. What's going on? Olivia's jaw tightened. It seems Judge Hammond doesn't appreciate criticism. After hanging up, Olivia noticed her hands had stopped trembling. The initial shock was replaced by something else, a cool, analytical clarity she hadn't felt since law school. Judge Hammond had made a critical error. He'd chosen the wrong teacher to intimidate. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Olivia took a personal day from school, claiming she needed to consult with an attorney. In the county law library, she pored over judicial conduct precedents and procedural rules. The elderly librarian, Mrs. Bennett, recognized her focus. Been a while since I've seen someone research so thoroughly, she remarked, helping Olivia locate a specific volume on contempt proceedings. Most folks just Google these days. Olivia smiled. My grandfather always said real legal research happens in actual books, not search engines. At the courthouse public records office, Olivia requested transcripts from Judge Hammond's previous contempt cases. The clerk seemed surprised by the specificity of her requests. These are unusual requests. For someone representing themselves, the clerk commented, eyeing the stack of transcripts. Olivia nodded. I believe in being thorough. On the day of her hearing, Olivia carefully selected her outfit, a simple navy sweater over black slacks. Professional but understated. No power suit that might telegraph her legal background. The element of surprise remained her greatest advantage. The municipal courthouse buzzed with morning activity harried, shuffling papers. Clerks calling names, anxious defendants waiting for their fate to be decided. Olivia sat quietly in the back row, observing Judge Hammond's handling of other cases before hers. His pattern was consistent. Brusque with defendants, deferential to prosecutors, impatient with explanations. Docket number 47B. Read, Olivia. Failure to appear and contempt of court. Martin finally called. Olivia approached the defendant's table, feeling eyes on her as she placed her grandfather's briefcase down. Judge Hammond barely looked up from her file, his expression one of practiced disinterest. Ms. Reed, he began, his tone condescending. You're charged with failing to appear for a scheduled court hearing regarding traffic violation. TR 202345892 and subsequent contempt for disregarding a judicial summons. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor, Olivia replied, her voice steady. I believe there's been a misunderstanding I'd like to clarify. Hammond's eyebrow raised slightly. The facts seem quite clear, Ms. Reed. You were notified to appear on October 15th regarding your citation. When you failed to appear, this court issued a contempt citation, which brings us to today. If I may, Your Honor, Olivia began, I never received any notification to appear on October 15th. I received a traffic citation on October 1st, which I paid online on October 3rd. I have the confirmation receipt here. She slid the printed confirmation across to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. Hammond glanced at it dismissively. Payment doesn't excuse a required appearance, Ms. Reed. The citation clearly indicated a court date was necessary. With respect. Your Honor, it did not, Olivia replied, producing the original citation. You'll see there's no court date indicated anywhere on the form, and the online payment portal showed the matter was resolved upon payment. A flicker of annoyance crossed the judge's face. Ms. Reed, perhaps in your English classes, you're used to having the final word. In my courtroom, I determine what constitutes proper notification and appropriate response. I understand, Your Honor, Olivia replied calmly. However, I believe procedural due process requires actual notice before contempt can be found. Could the court perhaps produce a copy of the appearance notification I allegedly received? Hammond's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. This was not going as he had planned. The simple teacher was supposed to be intimidated, apologetic, easy to dismiss. Proceed with caution, Ms. Reed, he warned. Challenging this court's procedures only compounds your contempt. The courtroom had grown unusually quiet, other attorneys pausing their conversations to watch the exchange. Ms. Reed, let me be clear, Hammond said, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. This court's records indicate proper notification was sent. Your failure to receive it does not constitute a defense. Olivia remained composed. I understand, Your Honor. Would it be possible to see the proof of service for that notification? The judge's eyes narrowed. Mr. Martin, please provide Ms. Reed with the standard notification record. The clerk shuffled nervously through the file before producing a form. Olivia reviewed it carefully. Your Honor, this form is dated October 10th, but it's not signed by any process server, nor is there a certified mail receipt. There's actually no evidence that this was ever sent. A muscle twitched in Hammond's jaw. Ms. Reed, are you suggesting court officials fabricated records? Not at all, Your Honor. I'm simply noting that the procedural requirements for service haven't been documented, according to Municipal Court Rule 7.3, which requires proof of actual delivery for contempt proceedings. The judge's expression darkened. Ms. Reed, your amateur legal analysis is trying my patience. You clearly have a problem with authority, as evidenced by your inappropriate comments at the town hall meeting last month. Perhaps that's the real issue here. There it was, the connection Olivia had been waiting for him to make publicly. She noticed the young reporter in the back row, scribbling notes furiously. I wasn't aware my constitutionally protected speech at a public forum was relevant to a traffic citation, Your Honor, Olivia replied, her tone respectful but firm. Hammond's face flushed slightly. Your attitude is precisely the problem. This court finds you in contempt for failing to appear as directed. You're fined $2,000 and sentenced to 40 hours of community service. He banged his gavel with finality, clearly expecting that to end the matter. Your Honor, Olivia said calmly, I'd like to make a motion. This matter is concluded, Ms. Reed, Hammond snapped. A motion for judicial recusal is always timely, Your Honor, Olivia continued. Under Judicial Conduct Rule 2.11, a judge shall recuse himself when his impartiality might reasonably be questioned. The courtroom fell completely silent. Judge Hammond stared at Olivia, momentarily speechless as he realized this was no ordinary defendant. On what possible grounds? He finally managed. Olivia opened her briefcase. I'd be happy to explain, Your Honor. She stood perfectly straight, hands resting lightly on her grandfather's briefcase. Your Honor, I move for your recusal on 3 grounds, she began, her voice clear and measured. She withdrew a neat, organized folder. First, there's a clear appearance of bias. You just explicitly connected these proceedings to my protected speech at a town hall meeting, suggesting this. Case is retaliatory in nature. Judge Hammond's face darkened. Ms. Reed, you're treading on dangerous ground. Second, Olivia continued, undeterred. There are significant procedural irregularities that suggest this matter was handled outside normal protocols. She produced a printout from the court's online system. The original citation was marked. Paid resolved in the system on October 3rd. Yet, somehow on October 9th, after the town hall meeting where I criticized Your Honor's ruling, the status was manually changed to appearance required without notification to me. Olivia turned, slightly, making sure her words reached the entire courtroom. I've submitted a public records request that shows this is the only traffic citation in the past year to have its status changed after payment was accepted. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. The court reporter's fingers flew across her stenotype. Machine. Furthermore, Olivia said, reaching into her briefcase again. I've documented 7 other cases where individuals who publicly disagreed with Your Honor subsequently faced unusual contempt proceedings or procedural penalties. Judge Hammond slammed his gavel. That's enough. This is contemptuous behavior. Which brings me to my third point, Olivia said, her voice somehow both respectful and resolute. Judicial Canon 2.2 requires that a judge shall not permit family, social, political, financial, or other interests or relationships to influence the judge's judicial conduct or judgment. She removed a sealed envelope she had prepared. If Your Honor won't recuse himself, I'm prepared to file a formal complaint with the Judicial Conduct Committee, including documentation of a pattern of using contempt powers against critics, of procedural irregularities in multiple cases, and testimony from 3 other defendants who experienced similar treatment after publicly disagreeing with Your Honor. The courtroom had gone from silence to a low buzz of astonished whispers. Several attorneys were frantically taking notes. The young reporter in the back had stopped, writing entirely, his mouth slightly agape. Judge Hammond's face had gone from red to ashen. Ms. Reed, he said, his voice noticeably strained, where exactly did you acquire your legal knowledge? Olivia allowed herself a small smile. Before I found my calling as a literature teacher, I graduated summa cum laude from state law school. Your Honor, while I chose not to practice, I've maintained my legal education. My grandfather always said, knowledge of the law is every citizen's best protection against its abuse. She placed her hand flat on the table. I'd like the record to reflect that I've submitted evidence showing procedural irregularities, documentation, of a pattern suggesting bias and formally move for recusal. If denied, I'm prepared to appeal immediately under the collateral order doctrine, which allows interlocutory appeal of recusal denials as established in Parkman v. County Court. Judge Hammond stared at Olivia, the realization dawning that his simple intimidation tactic had backfired catastrophically. The simple teacher had not only recognized his trap, but had set one of her own. And he had walked right into it. After a tense 15-minute recess, Hammond returned with a completely changed demeanor. What exactly do you want, Ms. Reed? He asked, his earlier arrogance replaced with controlled anger. Justice, Olivia replied steadily. Dismissal of these fabricated charges. Notation they were dismissed with prejudice. And your recusal from any matters involving me or Pinecrest High. Upon returning to court, Hammond announced in a clipped voice that all charges were dismissed with prejudice. And he recused himself from future matters involving her to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Outside, a reporter approached. Ms. Reed, would you comment on what happened? Olivia smiled. Our justice system works best when everyone understands their rights, including judges. 2 weeks later, after discussing To Kill a Mockingbird with her class, Principal Wilson and Superintendent Parker entered the room. After class, Wilson approached. I owe you an apology, Olivia. I should have supported you. You were in a difficult position, Olivia replied graciously. Things have changed, the superintendent added. Judge Hammond has taken a leave of absence, and our funding has been restored. That evening, Olivia found a framed photo of her grandfather on her shelf, with a note from her students. Thank you for teaching us that standing up for what's right matters. She smiled, running her fingers over his law books. Perhaps education truly was the path to justice after all.